Good afternoon, everyone. This is Katya. And after I've read 1001 Nights yesterday in Arabic, some of my friends over in Redlands area, California, and have asked me if I could read it in English. And so I found this translation back in 1912 by Mr. Lane, and I like it. It's very close to the Arabic rendition. And so I will be reading you what I have read yesterday and stopping at the same place. And so maybe do one reading in Arabic and then followed by an English one. And so everyone can enjoy these tales and stories and lessons and all of that. Beautiful things. So a quick reminder to my English readers and who's living out here is that this is written in 10th century, so Middle Ages, Arabic era and period, and so it's kind of an older history connoted to it, and it's pretty cool. Some of the ideas and thoughts it's very old and is not anymore taken by the Arab world, but it's stories and fairy tales, so take it as thus. And in these stories we have a lot of mentions of genies, magic carpet, as you know, and so on and so forth. Lots of magic in them. So I hope you enjoy it. Because it's written in Arabic, we always start with by calling the name of God and Muhammad. So here we go. 1001 Nights in English. Introduction. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Praise be to God, the beneficent King, the creator of the universe, who hath raised the heavens without pillars, and spread out the earth as a bed. And blessing and peace be on the Lord of Apostles, our Lord and our Master Muhammad, and his family. Blessing and peace, enduring and constant, unto the day of judgment. It is related, but God alone is all-knowing as well as all-wise and almighty and all-bountiful, that there was in ancient times a king of the countries of India and China, possessing numerous troops and guards and servants and domestic dependents. And he had 2 sons, one of whom was a man of mature age, and the other a youth. Both of these princes were brave horsemen, but especially the elder, who inherited the kingdom of his father, and governed his subjects with such justice that the inhabitants of his country and whole empire loved him. He was called King Shahriyar. His younger brother was named Shah Zaman, and was king of Samarkand. The administration of their governments was conducted with rectitude, each of them ruling over his subjects with justice during a period of 20 years with the utmost enjoyment and happiness. After this period, the elder king felt a strong desire to see his brother and ordered his vizier to repair to him and bring him. Having taken the advice of the vizier on the subject, he immediately gave orders to prepare handsome presents, such as horses adorned with gold and costly jewels, and Mamluks, and beautiful virgins and expensive stuffs. He then wrote a letter to his brother, expressive of his great desire to see him, and having sealed it and given it to his vizier, together with the present above mentioned, he ordered the minister to strain his nerves and tuck up his skirts and use all expedition in returning. The vizier answered without delay, I hear and obey, and forthwith prepared for the journey. He packed his baggage, removed the burdens, and made ready all his provisions within 3 days. And on the 4th day, he took leave of the King Shahryar and went forth towards the deserts and wastes. He proceeded night and day, and each of the kings under the authority of King Shahryar, by whose residence he passed, came forth to meet him with costly presents and gifts of gold and silver, and entertained him for 3 days. After which, on the 4th day, he accompanied him 1 day's journey and took leave of him. Thus he continued on his way until he drew near to the city of Samarkand, where he sent forward a messenger to inform King Shah Zaman of his approach. The messenger entered the city, inquired the way to the palace, and, introducing himself to the king, kissed the ground before him, and acquainted him with the approach of his brother's vizier, upon which Shah Zaman ordered the chief officers of his court and the great men of his kingdom to go forth a day's journey to meet him. And they did so, and when they met him, they welcomed him and walked by his stirrups until they returned to the city. The vizier then presented himself before the King Shah Zaman, greeted him with a prayer for the divine assistance in his favor, kissed the ground before him, and informed him of his brother's desire to see him. After which he handed to him the letter. The king took it, read it, and understood its contents, and answered by expressing his readiness to obey the commands of his brother. But, said he, as he addressed the vizier, I will not go until I have entertained thee 3 days. Accordingly, he lodged him in a palace befitting his rank, accommodated his troops in tents, and appointed them all things requisite in the way of food and drink. And so they remained 3 days. On the 4th day, he equipped himself for the journey, made ready his baggage, and collected together costly presents suitable to his brother's dignity. These preparations being completed, he sent forth and camels and mules and servants and guards, appointed his vizier to be governor of the country during his absence, and set out towards his brother's dominions. At midnight, however, he remembered that he had left in his palace an article which he should have brought with him. And having returned to the palace to fetch it, he there beheld his wife sleeping in his bed and attended by a male servant who had fallen asleep by her side. On beholding the scene, the world became black before his eyes, and he said within himself, If this is the case when I have not departed from the city, what will be the conduct of this vile woman when I am sojourning with my brother? He then drew his sword and slew them both in the bed, after which he immediately returned, gave orders for departures, and journeyed to his brother's. Shahryar, rejoicing at the tidings of his approach, went forth to meet him, saluted him, and welcomed him with the utmost delight. He then ordered that the city should be decorated on the occasion, and sat down to entertain his brother with cheerful conversation. But the mind of Shah Zaman was distracted by reflections upon the conduct of his wife. Excessive grief took possession of him, and his countenance became sallow, and his frame emaciated. His brother observed his altered condition, and, imagining that it was occasioned by his absence from his dominions, abstained from troubling him or asking respecting the cause, until after the lapse of some days, when at length he said to him, "O my brother, I perceive that thy body is emaciated, and thy countenance is become sallow." He answered, "O brother, I have an internal sore." And he informed him not of the conduct of his wife, which he had witnessed. Shahriyar then said, "I wish that thou wouldest go out with me on a hunting excursion. Perhaps thy mind might so be diverted." But he declined, and Shahriyar went alone to the chase. Now, there were some windows in the king's palace commanding a view of his garden. And while his brother was looking out from one of these, a door of the palace was opened, and there came forth from it 20 females and 20 males servants, and the king's wife, who was distinguished by extraordinary beauty and elegance, accompanied them to a fountain, where they all disrobed themselves and sat down together. The king's wife then called out, "O Mas'ud!" And immediately a servant came to her and embraced her, she doing the like. So also did the other servants and the women, and all of them continued reveling together until the close of the day. When Shah Zaman beheld the spectacle, he said within himself, "By Allah, my affliction is lighter than this." His vexation and grief were alleviated, and he no longer abstained from sufficient food and drink. When his brother returned from his excursion, and they had saluted each other, and King Shahriyar observed his brother Shah Zaman, that his color had returned, that his face had recovered the flush of health, and that he ate with appetite after his late abstinence, he was surprised and said, "O brother, when I saw thee last, thy countenance was sallow, and now thy color hath returned to thee. Acquaint me with thy state." "As to the change of my natural complexion," answered Shah Zaman, "I will inform thee of its cause. But excuse my explaining to thee the return of my color." "First," said Shahriyar, "relate to me the cause of the change of thy proper complexion, and of thy weakness. Let me hear it." "Know then, O my brother," he answered, "that when thou sentest thy vizier to me to invite me to thy presence, I prepared myself for the journey, and when I had gone forth from the city, I remembered that I had left behind me the jewel that I have given thee. I therefore returned to my palace for it, and there I found my wife sleeping in my bed and attended by a male servant, and I killed them both and came to thee. But my mind was occupied by reflections upon this affair, and this was the cause of the change of my complexion and of my weakness. Now, as to the return of my color, excuse my informing thee of its cause." But when his brother heard these words, he said, "I conjure thee by Allah that thou acquaint me with the cause of the return of thy color." So he repeated to him all that he had seen. "I would see this," said Shahriyar, "with my own eye." "Then," said Shahzaman, "give out that thou art going again to the chase, and conceal thyself here with me, and thou shalt witness this conduct and obtain ocular proof of it." Shahriyar, upon this, immediately announced that it was his intention to make another excursion. The troops went out of the city with the tents, and the king followed them. And after he had reposed a while in the camp, he said to his servants, "Let no one come into me." And he disguised himself and returned to his brother in the palace, and sat in one of the windows overlooking the garden. And when he had been there a short time, the women and their mistress entered the garden with the servants, and did as his brother had described, continuing so until the hour of the afternoon prayer. When King Shahriyar beheld this occurrence, reason fled from his head, and he said to his brother Shahzaman, "Arise, let us travel whither we please and renounce this regal state until we see whether such a calamity as this have befallen any other person like unto us. And if not, our death will be preferable to our life." His brother agreed to his proposal, and they went out from a private door of the palace and journeyed continually days and nights until they arrived at a tree in the midst of a meadow by a spring of water on the shore of the sea. They drank of this spring and sat down to rest. And when the day had a little advanced, the sea became troubled before them, and there arose from it a black pillar, ascending towards the sky and approaching the meadow. Struck with fear and the sight, they climbed into the tree, which was lofty, and thence they gazed to see what this might be. And behold, it was a genie of gigantic stature, broad-fronted and bulky, bearing on his head a chest. He landed and came to the tree into which the two kings had climbed, and having seated himself beneath it, opened the chest and took out of it another box, which he also opened. And there came forth from it a young woman, fair and beautiful like the shining sun. When the genie cast his eyes upon her, he said, "O lady of noble race, whom I carried off on thy wedding night, I have a desire to sleep a little." And he placed his head upon her knee and slept. The damsel then raised her eyes towards the tree and saw there the two kings, upon which she removed the head of the genie from her knee, and having placed it on the ground, stood under the tree and made signs for the two kings, as though she would say, "Come down, come down. Fear not this Afrit." And Afrit in Arabic means this devil. They answered her, "We conjure thee by Allah that thou excuse us in this matter." But she said, "I conjure you by the same that he come down." and if ye do not, I will rouse, and he shall put you to a cruel death. So, being afraid, they came down to her. And after they had remained with her as long as she required, she took from her pocket a purse, and drew out from this ring, upon which were 98 seal rings. And she said to them, Know ye what are these? They answered, We know not. The owners of these rings, said she, have all of them been admitted to converse with me, like as ye have, foolish Ifrit. Therefore, give me your 2 rings, ye brothers. So they gave her their 2 rings from their fingers. And she then said to him, This Ifrit carried me off on my wedding night, and put me in the box, and placed the box in the chest, and affixed to the chest 7 locks, and deposited me thus imprisoned in the bottom of the roaring sea, beneath the dashing waves, not knowing that when one of our sex desires to accomplish any object, nothing can prevent us. When the 2 kings heard these words from her lips, they were struck with the utmost astonishment, and said one to the other, If this is a Ifrit, and a greater calamity that hath happened unto him than that which hath befallen us, this is a circumstance that should console us. And immediately they departed and returned to the city. As soon as they had entered the palace, Shahriyar caused his wife to be beheaded, and in like manner the women and men servants. And thenceforth he made it his regular every time that he took a woman to his bed, to kill her at the expiration of the night. Thus he continued to do during a period of 3 years. And the people raised an outcry against him, and fled with their daughters, and there remained not even one girl in the city of a sufficient age for marriage. Such was the case when the king ordered his vizier to bring him a woman according to his custom. And the vizier went forth and searched, and he searched, and he searched, and he found no one. And he went back to his house enraged and vexed, fearing what the king might do to him. Now the vizier had 2 daughters, the elder of whom was named Shahrazad, and the younger Dunyazad. The former had read various books of histories, and the lives of preceding kings, and stories of past generations. It is asserted that she had collected together 1,000 books of histories relating to preceding generations and kings, and works of the poets. And she said to her father on this occasion, Why do I see thee thus changed, and oppressed with solicitude and sorrows? It has been said by one of our poets, Tell him who is oppressed with anxiety, that anxiety will not last. As happiness passeth away, so passeth away anxiety. When the vizier heard these words from his daughter, he related to her all that had happened to him with regard to the king. Upon which she said, By Allah, O my father, give me in marriage to this king. Either I shall die, or I shall live and be the cause of the deliverance of all the women from him. I conjure thee by Allah, exclaimed he, that thou expose not thyself to such peril. But she said, It must be so. Then said he, I fear for thee that the same will befall thee that happened in the case of the donkey and the bull man. And what, she asked, was that, O my father? And so we stop here today at the story of the donkey and the bull and the husbandman. And I'll see you in 2 days' time to tell you that particular story and see how Shahrazad will continue on, see the king and be his wife and tell him all kinds of stories, how she's gonna survive in the 1000 nights. Thank you for listening. Hope you're still healthy and well. Miss you all. Take care. Bye.